Sarah Martinez had always been smaller than everyone else. At 5 feet 4 inches and weighing barely 125 pounds, she looked more like a college student than someone preparing to join one of the most elite military units in the world. But size had never stopped her before, and it wouldn't stop her now. The morning sun cast long shadows across the naval training facility as Sarah stepped off the bus with 23 other recruits. The other candidates were mostly men, towering over her with their broad shoulders and muscled frames. A few women were scattered among the group, but even they seemed to dwarf Sarah's petite figure. "Welcome to hell," muttered Jake Thompson, a former college football player from Texas who stood nearly 6.5 feet tall. His comment earned chuckles from several nearby recruits as they all stared at the imposing training compound ahead of them. Sarah ignored the comment and focused on the concrete buildings, obstacle courses, and training grounds that would become her world for the next several months. She had dreamed of this moment since she was 12 years old, watching documentaries about special forces operations with her grandfather, a retired Marine who had served in Vietnam. The first few days were brutal for everyone, but Sarah quickly became a target for mockery and doubt. During physical training sessions, she struggled to keep up with the larger recruits during certain exercises, particularly those requiring upper body strength. Her push-ups were slower, her pull-ups fewer, and her rope climbing times longer than most of the men. "Hey, Pixie," called out Marcus Rivera, a former amateur boxer from Chicago, during their third day of training. "Maybe you should try out for the cheerleading squad instead. I hear they're looking for someone who can actually fit into those tiny uniforms." The comment sparked laughter from several other recruits as they gathered around the mess hall table for dinner. Sarah continued eating her meal, her jaw tightening slightly, but she said nothing in response. "Come on, Marcus," said Lisa Chun, one of the other female recruits. "Give her a break. We're all here for the same reason." "Are we, though?" Marcus shot back. "Some of us are here to become warriors. Others are here to prove some kind of point about equality. There's a difference." Sarah finally looked up from her tray, her dark eyes meeting Marcus's gaze steadily. "I'm here to serve my country and protect people who can't protect themselves. Same as you, I imagine, unless you have different motivations." Her calm response seemed to irritate Marcus even more. Serving your country is one thing, but this isn't the Peace Corps, princess. This is about life and death situations where physical capability matters more than good intentions. "Then, I guess we'll find out who's really capable when it counts," Sarah replied quietly, returning to her meal. As the weeks progressed, the verbal harassment continued from Marcus and his growing group of supporters. They nicknamed her Thumbelina and made jokes about needing a stepladder to reach equipment. During team exercises, some recruits would deliberately exclude her or position her in roles they assumed she couldn't handle effectively. The physical challenges were relentless. Dawn brought 5-mile runs in full gear, followed by obstacle courses, weapons training, and combat simulation exercises. Sarah's times improved steadily, but she still ranked in the bottom third of the class for most physical metrics. What she lacked in raw strength, she tried to compensate for with technique, endurance, and an almost stubborn refusal to quit. One particularly difficult day involved a beach warfare training exercise. The recruits had to carry heavy equipment across sand dunes while being pelted with simulated enemy fire from paintball guns. Sarah struggled with a communications pack that weighed nearly 40 pounds, almost a third of her body weight. "This is pathetic," Jake Thompson said loudly enough for everyone to hear as Sarah stumbled in the sand, trying to maintain her grip on the unwieldy equipment. In a real combat situation, she'd get everyone killed. Instructor Petty Officer Williams, a gruff veteran with 20 years of experience, overheard the comment, but said nothing. He had been watching Sarah carefully for weeks, noting her determination despite the obvious physical disadvantages. Unlike some of the other instructors who seemed to enjoy seeing recruits break under pressure, Williams maintained a neutral expression as he observed each candidate's progress. That evening, exhausted and covered in sand, Sarah sat alone in the barracks polishing her boots. Most of the other recruits had gone to the recreation room to watch television and decompress. She preferred the quiet solitude, using the time to mentally review the day's lessons and prepare for tomorrow's challenges. Lisa Chun approached her bunk, carrying her own boot polish and cloth. Mind if I join you? She asked. Of course not, Sarah replied, making room on her footlocker for Lisa to sit down. You know they're just trying to get under your skin, right? Lisa said, beginning to work on her own boots. Some of these guys can't handle the idea that women might be just as committed as they are. Sarah nodded, but remained focused on her task. I expected it. My grandfather warned me that proving yourself is twice as hard when you don't fit people's expectations of what a warrior should look like. Your grandfather was military? Marines. 3 tours in Vietnam. He taught me that respect isn't given based on size or gender. It's earned through actions, especially when things get difficult. Lisa smiled. Smart man. What made you decide to pursue this path? Sarah paused in her polishing, her expression growing distant. When I was 16, my younger brother was killed in a car accident caused by a drunk driver. I realized that life is fragile and unpredictable, and I wanted to do something meaningful with whatever time I have. Protecting others feels like the most important thing I could do with my life. The sincerity in her voice made Lisa stop her own work. She had expected a more typical answer about patriotism or adventure-seeking. Instead, she heard genuine purpose and conviction. I'm sorry about your brother, Lisa said softly. Thank you. His name was David. He wanted to be a teacher. Sarah resumed polishing her boots with renewed focus. Every time someone here tells me I don't belong, I think about him and all the other people who deserve to live their dreams without fear. That keeps me going. The conversation was interrupted by loud laughter from the recreation room. Through the doorway, they could see Marcus and Jake reenacting Sarah's struggle with the communications equipment from earlier, exaggerating her stumbling movements for comedic effect. Pathetic, Lisa muttered, shaking her head. Sarah watched the performance for a moment, then returned to her boots. They're not wrong about my physical limitations, she admitted. I am smaller and not as strong as most of them. But I'm not here to compete with them in bench press competitions. I'm here to learn skills that will make me effective in situations that require more than just brute force. Over the following weeks, Sarah's academic performance began to stand out. During tactical planning exercises, she consistently developed creative solutions that impressed the instructors. Her situational awareness scores were among the highest in the class, and her marksmanship improved rapidly once she learned to adapt her stance and grip for her smaller frame. But the physical challenges remained daunting. The notorious Hell Week was approaching, a 5-day period of continuous training with minimal sleep and maximum stress designed to eliminate candidates who lacked the mental fortitude to continue. 3 days before Hell Week was scheduled to begin, Sarah received an unexpected visitor. Her grandfather, Sergeant Major Roberto Martinez, retired, had driven 8 hours from his home in New Mexico to see her. They met in a small cafe near the base, and Sarah was struck by how frail he looked compared to her childhood memories. At 82 years old, his once powerful frame had been diminished by age and illness, but his eyes still held the sharp intelligence and quiet strength she remembered. You look tired, Mija, he said, using the Spanish endearment from her childhood. It's been challenging, she admitted, not wanting to worry him with details about the harassment or her struggles with certain physical requirements. Are they treating you fairly? Sarah hesitated, then decided honesty was best. Some of the other recruits don't think I belong here. They make that
Listen
opinion
up,
known
soldier.
regularly.
This is
Her
critical.
grandfather nodded
You have
slowly.
to execute
I
this
faced
perfectly.
similar attitudes when I enlisted. Being Mexican-American in the 1960s military wasn't easy. But you know what I learned? What? The loudest critics are usually the ones most afraid of being shown up. They recognize something in you that threatens their sense of superiority. He leaned forward, his weathered hands folding together on the table. Tell me, are you learning? Are you improving? Yes, definitely. The tactical and academic portions are going well. Some of the physical challenges are still difficult, but I'm getting stronger. Then, you're exactly where you need to be. Remember what I always told you about the Marines. Sarah smiled slightly. Every Marine is first and foremost a rifleman, regardless of their assigned specialty. Exactly. Size doesn't determine effectiveness. Heart does. Intelligence does. Dedication does. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a small wrapped package. I brought you something. Inside the wrapping was a leather bracelet with a small silver charm attached. The charm was shaped like a traditional Aztec warrior symbol, intricately detailed despite its small size. This belonged to your great-great-grandfather, Miguel Martinez. He fought with Villa during the Mexican Revolution. Not a big man either, but he was known for his courage and tactical brilliance. I wore it through Vietnam, and it kept me focused on what really mattered. Sarah examined the bracelet carefully. The leather was soft with age, and the silver charm caught the light as she turned it in her hands. Abuelo, I can't take this. It's too important. It's important enough that it should be worn by someone worthy of its legacy. Someone who understands that true strength comes from within. He reached across the table and gently took the bracelet, fastening it around her wrist. Miguel was outnumbered in every battle he fought, but he never retreated because he knew what he was fighting for. Just like you do. As they said goodbye in the parking lot, her grandfather pulled her into a tight hug. Whatever happens in the coming weeks, remember that you carry the strength of generations with you. We don't quit, Mija. We find a way. Sarah returned to base that evening feeling renewed, but also aware that the most difficult challenges lay ahead. Hell Week would begin in 3 days, and she knew that several recruits would not make it through. The physical and mental pressure would be unlike anything she had experienced, and her critics would be watching closely for any sign of failure. That night, as she lay in her bunk staring at the ceiling, she could feel the weight of the bracelet around her wrist. The small silver charm seemed to pulse with the memories and determination of those who had worn it before her. She thought about her brother David, her grandfather's stories of Vietnam, and the unknown battles that Miguel Martinez had fought over a century ago. The whispered conversations of other recruits gradually faded as the barracks settled into sleep. Some were confident about the coming week, others were nervous, and a few were already planning their withdrawal from the program. Sarah closed her eyes and tried to empty her mind of doubt and fear. Tomorrow would bring another day of preparation. Then, Hell Week would test everything she had learned and everything she believed about herself. The critics and supporters would fade into background noise when the real challenge began. Only her training, her determination, and whatever inner strength she could summon would matter then. The bracelet's charm caught a sliver of moonlight through the barracks window, a tiny reminder of the legacy she carried and the purpose that had brought her to this moment. In 3 days, she would discover whether that legacy was strong enough to carry her through the trial ahead. Hell Week began at 4 in the morning with the sound of air horns and instructors shouting commands. Sarah jolted awake with the rest of the recruits, her heart immediately racing as the reality of what lay ahead hit her fully. The next 5 days would involve continuous training with a maximum of 4 hours of sleep per night, designed to push every candidate beyond their perceived limits. The first challenge was a 2-mile ocean swim in full gear, followed immediately by a beach run carrying telephone poles in teams of 8. Sarah was assigned to a pole with Marcus, Jake, and 5 other male recruits who towered over her significantly. The telephone pole weighed over 400 pounds, and distributing that weight evenly among team members required coordination and communication. Great, Marcus muttered as they hefted the pole onto their shoulders. We got stuck with dead weight. The comment stung, but Sarah focused on maintaining her grip and keeping pace with the group. Her shoulder ached almost immediately under the pressure, but she gritted her teeth and pushed forward through the sand. When her teammates called out timing for steps, she matched their rhythm exactly, never falling behind despite her shorter stride. 3 miles into the run, Jake stumbled and nearly lost his grip on the pole. Without hesitation, Sarah shifted her position to help stabilize the load, preventing the entire team from dropping it and facing penalty laps. The instructors noted the quick thinking, but Marcus seemed more irritated than grateful for her assistance. The following challenges blended together into an exhausting blur of obstacle courses, combat simulations, weapons training, and survival exercises. Sleep was limited to brief periods between activities, and meals were eaten quickly while standing or walking to the next training station. By the 3rd day, several recruits had voluntarily withdrawn from the program, unable to handle the relentless physical and mental pressure. Sarah's body ached in ways she had never experienced, her muscles screaming for rest, her mind fighting waves of exhaustion that threatened to overwhelm her focus. During a nighttime navigation exercise through swampland, recruits were required to locate specific checkpoints using only compass and map while carrying full packs and weapons. The terrain was treacherous, filled with mud, standing water, and thick vegetation that caught on equipment and clothing. Sarah found herself partnered with Tom Bradley, a quiet recruit from Montana who had barely spoken to her throughout the entire training program. Unlike Marcus and his friends, Tom didn't actively mock her, but he also didn't show any particular support or encouragement. "You doing okay?" Tom asked as they waded through knee-deep murky water, checking their compass bearing for the third checkpoint. "I'm fine," Sarah replied, though her legs felt like rubber and every step required tremendous effort. The water had soaked through her boots hours ago, and her feet were starting to develop painful blisters. "We're behind schedule," Tom observed, glancing at his watch. "Most of the other teams are probably already heading to the fourth checkpoint." Sarah nodded, pushing aside a hanging branch that blocked their path. "Then, we need to move faster." They pressed on through the swamp, navigating by moonlight and the occasional sweep of their red-filtered flashlights. The sounds of other teams had long since faded, leaving only the splash of their movement and the distant calls of night birds. When they finally reached the fourth checkpoint, they found Instructor Williams waiting with a clipboard and stopwatch. His expression was unreadable as he recorded their arrival time and verified their navigation calculations. "You're 47 minutes behind the leader," he informed them. "But your route plotting is accurate, and you maintained proper noise discipline throughout the exercise." As they prepared to move toward the final checkpoint, Williams stopped Sarah with a gesture. Tom continued ahead, understanding that private conversations with instructors were part of the evaluation process. "Martinez," Williams said, his voice low enough that other teams wouldn't overhear. "You're running on empty. I can see it in your movement patterns." Sarah straightened her shoulders, fighting the urge to acknowledge her exhaustion. "I can complete the exercise, Petty Officer. I'm not questioning your determination. But I want you to understand something about the next 48 hours. The challenges are going to get significantly more difficult. We're going to push everyone beyond what they think is possible, and some good people are going to discover they've reached their limit." Sarah waited, sensing that he had more to say. There's no shame in recognizing when you've given everything you have to give. Sometimes the bravest decision is knowing when to stop before you cause permanent damage to yourself or put others at risk. The words hung in the humid night air between them. Sarah could feel the weight of what he was suggesting, the easy path out of a situation that was only going to become more demanding. "With respect, Petty Officer, I appreciate your concern for my welfare. But I didn't come this far to quit 48 hours before the finish line. My grandfather didn't survive 3 tours in Vietnam, so his granddaughter could give up when things got difficult." Williams studied her face in the moonlight, looking for signs of bravado or false confidence. Instead, he saw quiet determination and a clear understanding of what she was committing to endure. "Very well. But I want you to understand that continuing doesn't guarantee success. Even if you complete Hell Week, there are months of additional training ahead, and the physical demands only increase. I understand, Petty Officer. I'm here to become the best operator I can be, not to prove something to people who have already made up their minds about me." Williams nodded slowly. "Catch up with your partner. You have 2 more checkpoints to reach before dawn." The remainder of Hell Week became a test of pure willpower. Sarah's body moved through the exercises on autopilot while her mind retreated to a deeper place of focus and determination. During a particularly brutal day that included multiple ocean swims, a 20-mile forced march, and combat simulation under live fire conditions, she found herself drawing strength from memories of her grandfather's stories and the feel of the bracelet around her wrist. Marcus and his supporters continued their harassment when instructors weren't within earshot, but their comments seemed to come from a different world now. Sarah barely registered their attempts to break her focus, too exhausted and too committed to waste energy on their negativity. On the final day of Hell Week, the remaining recruits faced the culminating challenge, a complex scenario that combined all the skills they had developed over the previous months. Teams were given mission parameters that required tactical planning, precise execution, and adaptability when conditions changed unexpectedly. Sarah found herself assigned as the communications specialist for a six-person team tasked with infiltrating a mock enemy compound and retrieving intelligence without detection. The scenario would require her to coordinate between team members, maintain contact with command, and manage technical equipment while moving through challenging terrain. The team leader was Jessica Walsh, one of the few female recruits who had consistently performed at the top of the class. Unlike some of the male recruits, Jessica had evaluated Sarah based on performance rather than preconceptions, and she positioned Sarah in the role that best utilized her demonstrated strengths. "Your job is to keep us connected and informed," Jessica explained during the mission briefing. "I need to know about changes in enemy patrol patterns, updates from command, and coordination between our advanced scouts and the main team. Can you handle that while maintaining pace with the group?" "Absolutely," Sarah replied, checking her communications equipment one final time. The mission began before dawn, with the team moving silently through dense forest toward their objective. Sarah carried the radio pack and encryption equipment while staying in constant communication with both command and the team's advanced scouts who had moved ahead to gather intelligence. 3 hours into the mission, the advanced scouts reported unexpected activity at the target compound. A larger enemy force than anticipated had arrived during the night, changing the tactical situation significantly. Sarah relayed this information to command while Jessica and the team reassessed their approach. "Command is recommending abort," Sarah reported quietly. "They're concerned about the increased risk level." Jessica considered the options carefully. The mission could still be completed, but it would require a more complex infiltration route and perfect timing to avoid detection by the additional guards. "What's your assessment of our communications security if we proceed?" Jessica asked. Sarah had been monitoring radio traffic and evaluating signal strength throughout the approach. "We have good coverage for coordination between team members, but the longer we stay in the area, the higher the risk of signal detection by enemy communications equipment." "Can you minimize that risk?" "Yes, by switching to burst transmission mode and using predetermined code phrases to reduce transmission time. But it means less detailed communication if we run into unexpected problems." Jessica made her decision. "We proceed with the modified approach. Sarah, I need you to coordinate timing between our 2 scout teams and the main infiltration group. Any breakdown in communication puts the entire team at risk." The next 4 hours tested every skill Sarah had developed during training. She managed multiple radio frequencies while moving through difficult terrain, coordinated timing between separated team elements, and maintained constant awareness of their tactical situation. When one of the advanced scouts was nearly detected by an enemy patrol, Sarah's quick communication warning allowed him to avoid exposure and maintain mission security. The mission concluded successfully with intelligence retrieved and the team extracted without detection. During the debrief, the instructors praised the team's coordination and adaptability, with specific recognition for Sarah's communications management under pressure. As the exhausted recruits returned to barracks for their first full night of sleep in 5 days, Sarah felt a profound sense of accomplishment mixed with relief. She had survived Hell Week and demonstrated her capabilities in the culminating exercise, but she was also aware that this was just one milestone in a much longer journey. That evening, as recruits celebrated their survival with subdued conversations in the recreation room, Sarah sat on her bunk writing a letter to her grandfather. She wanted to share the news of completing Hell Week and to thank him for the bracelet that had provided comfort during the most difficult moments. As she wrote, Marcus approached her bunk with an expression she hadn't seen from him before. Gone was the typical arrogance and mockery, replaced by something that might have been respect, or at least acknowledgement. "Martinez," he said, his voice lacking its usual edge. Sarah looked up from her letter, waiting to see what new criticism he might offer. "I wanted to say," Marcus paused, seeming to struggle with the words. "You did good work this week. During the communications exercise especially. Jessica told me you kept the whole operation coordinated when things got complicated." The admission clearly cost him some effort, and Sarah could see that his perception of her had shifted during the intense training period. She nodded simply, not wanting to make the moment more difficult for either of them. "Thank you," she replied. We all did what we needed to do. Marcus nodded and walked away without further comment, leaving Sarah to finish her letter in the relative quiet of the barracks. She realized that completing Hell Week had changed more than just her own confidence. The other recruits had watched her perform under the most demanding conditions possible, and many of their preconceptions had been challenged by what they observed. But even as she felt a sense of accomplishment about surviving this crucial test, Sarah knew that the most significant challenges still lay ahead. Hell Week had eliminated the recruits who lacked basic fortitude, but the remaining candidates would face increasingly specialized training that would test not just their physical capabilities, but their tactical intelligence, leadership potential, and ability to operate effectively in life and death situations. The bracelet around her wrist caught the overhead lights as she sealed the letter to her grandfather. In a few days, training would resume with even greater intensity, and she would discover whether her performance during Hell Week had truly established her credibility or if she would face new forms of doubt and challenge from instructors and fellow recruits alike. The weeks following Hell Week brought a new intensity to the training program. The surviving recruits, now numbering only 16 out of the original 24, faced advanced tactical exercises that required not just physical endurance, but sophisticated problem-solving and leadership skills. Sarah found herself gaining confidence as the training shifted toward areas where her analytical mind and attention to detail became significant advantages. During a complex urban warfare simulation, recruits were divided into four-person teams and given scenarios that mimicked real-world special operations missions. Sarah's team was tasked with extracting a high-value target from a multi-story building while minimizing civilian casualties and avoiding detection by a superior enemy force. Her teammates included Lisa Chun, Tom Bradley, and, surprisingly, Jake Thompson, who had gradually become less hostile since Hell Week. The four of them spent hours studying building layouts, analyzing patrol patterns, and developing contingency plans for various complications that might arise during the mission. "Sarah's right about the timing," Tom said during one of their planning sessions, referencing her analysis of guard rotation schedules. "We have a 12-minute window when the north stairwell will be clear, but only if we can neutralize the rooftop lookout without alerting the command post." Jake, who had initially been skeptical of Sarah's tactical suggestions, nodded in agreement. "Her communications plan is solid too. If we stick to the predetermined signals, we can coordinate movement between floors without using radios that might be intercepted." The mission simulation took place in a specially constructed training facility that perfectly replicated an urban environment complete with civilian role players, simulated enemy forces, and live instructors evaluating every decision. Sarah's role as team communications coordinator required her to manage information flow between team members while maintaining situational awareness and adapting to unexpected developments. The extraction proceeded flawlessly for the first 20 minutes. The team moved through the building according to plan, neutralized simulated enemies with paintball weapons, and located their target on the third floor. Enemy reinforcements approaching from the east. Request guidance on modified extraction procedure. Alpha Team, you have 8 minutes before enemy reinforcements arrive in overwhelming numbers. Primary mission is target extraction. Civilian rescue is secondary priority. The team faced a crucial decision that would test their judgment as much as their tactical skills. They could complete their primary mission quickly and escape before the reinforcements arrived, or they could attempt to rescue the civilians and risk being overwhelmed by superior numbers. Sarah looked at her teammates, seeing the same conflict in their expressions that she felt herself. The mission parameters were clear, but the moral implications of abandoning innocent people weighed heavily on all of them. "We can't leave them," Lisa said quietly, voicing what everyone was thinking. "But if we get overwhelmed trying to rescue them, everyone dies, including our primary target," Jake pointed out. "That's not necessarily a better outcome." Tom studied the building layout one more time. "Sarah, what's your assessment of our communication options if we split the team?" Sarah thought quickly, analyzing the radio's range and the building's interference patterns that she had been monitoring throughout the exercise. "I can maintain contact between two elements if we use the relay position on the second floor. But coordination becomes much more difficult with split teams." Here's what we do, Jake said, taking charge as the team's designated leader. Lisa and Tom take the primary target out the north route we planned originally. Sarah and I go for the civilians in the basement. Sarah coordinates between both elements and calls for emergency extraction if either team gets in trouble. It was a risky plan that violated conventional tactical doctrine about splitting forces, but it represented the kind of creative problem-solving that special operations demanded. The team executed the plan with precision, with Sarah managing communications between the two elements while helping Jake navigate the basement level and locate the civilian role players. The exercise concluded with both the primary target and all civilians successfully extracted just minutes before the simulated enemy reinforcements would have overwhelmed their position. During the debrief, the instructors praised the team's tactical flexibility and ethical decision-making under pressure. You recognize that sometimes the textbook solution isn't the right solution, commented Commander Michael Torres, the senior instructor who had been observing the exercise. Real special operations work requires judgment that goes beyond following predetermined procedures. Sarah felt a deep sense of satisfaction as she realized how much her confidence and tactical skills had grown since the early days of training. The other recruits were beginning to seek her input during planning sessions, and even Marcus Rivera had started including her in informal study groups where candidates shared knowledge and prepared for upcoming challenges. But the most significant change came 3 weeks later, during what would become the defining moment of her entire training experience. The recruits were participating in an advanced combat exercise that involved multiple teams competing in complex scenarios designed to identify potential leaders and evaluate decision-making under extreme stress. Sarah's team was executing a nighttime reconnaissance mission when everything went wrong in ways that no simulation could have anticipated. While moving through a densely forested training area, Tom Bradley stepped into a hidden depression and twisted his ankle severely. The injury was real, not part of the exercise, and it immediately changed the team's tactical situation. Tom couldn't move effectively on his own, but the mission required them to reach a specific observation point and maintain surveillance for 4 hours before extraction. Sarah was serving as the team's medic for this exercise, a role that had been assigned based on her performance in advanced first aid training. She quickly assessed Tom's injury and realized it was serious enough that he needed immediate medical attention. "I need to call for medical evacuation," she told Jake, who was serving as team leader for this mission. "That means mission failure and potentially washing out of the program for all of us," Jake replied, his voice tight with stress. "Can you stabilize him enough to complete the mission?" Sarah examined Tom's ankle more carefully, noting the swelling and the way he couldn't put any weight on it without significant pain. Her medical training told her that continuing the mission risked permanent damage to his injury, but her understanding of the program's requirements told her that calling for evacuation might end everyone's chance of completing training successfully. "I can probably manage his pain enough that we could reach the observation point," she said slowly. "But carrying him that distance and then maintaining a static position for 4 hours could make the injury much worse." The team faced an impossible choice between mission completion and a teammate's long-term welfare. Lisa and the fourth team member, David Park, waited for leadership to make a decision, while Tom insisted through gritted teeth that he could continue despite obvious severe pain. Sarah found herself thinking about her grandfather's stories of Vietnam, about the decisions Marines had to make when the textbook answer wasn't clear. She remembered his emphasis on taking care of your people above all other considerations. "We call for medical evacuation," she said firmly. "Mission failure is temporary. Permanent injury to a teammate isn't acceptable when we have other options." Jake started to argue, but Sarah cut him off. "I'm the medic on this exercise, which means medical decisions are my responsibility. We're calling for evacuation." She activated her emergency radio and requested immediate medical support, providing precise location coordinates and details about Tom's condition. The response was swift, with instructors and medical personnel arriving within 20 minutes to transport Tom to the base medical facility. The team's mission was officially classified as a failure, and Sarah expected to face consequences for the decision that had prioritized a teammate's welfare over mission completion. Instead, she was surprised to receive a request to report to Commander Torres's office the following morning. Commander Torres was not someone the recruits interacted with regularly. A legendary figure in the special operations community, he had served multiple tours in Iraq and Afghanistan before taking charge of the training program. His office walls displayed commendations and photographs from operations that most people would never know about. "Sit down, Martinez," he said, gesturing to a chair across from his desk. "I want to talk to you about yesterday's exercise." Sarah sat at attention, prepared for criticism about her decision to prioritize medical evacuation over mission completion. Instead, Commander Torres surprised her by opening a folder and studying what appeared to be her complete training record. "Your academic scores are excellent," he began. "Tactical planning, situational analysis, communications management, all in the top 10% of your class. Your physical fitness scores have improved dramatically since Hell Week, though you're still in the bottom third for pure strength metrics." He closed the folder and looked directly at her. "But what interests me most is your decision-making pattern. During the urban warfare simulation, you and your team chose to attempt civilian rescue despite increased risk to mission completion. Yesterday, you chose medical evacuation despite certain mission failure. Tell me about that thought process." Sarah considered her answer carefully. "Sir, I believe that successful special operations require more than just completing assigned objectives. They require maintaining the trust and cohesion of the team, protecting innocent people when possible, and making decisions that reflect the values we're supposed to be defending. Those are idealistic concepts, Martinez. In real combat situations, you may face choices where those values conflict with mission requirements or survival necessity." "Yes, sir, I understand that. But I also believe that if we abandon our principles during training when the stakes are relatively low, it becomes easier to abandon them later when the stakes are life and death." Commander Torres leaned back in his chair, a slight smile crossing his features. "How much do you know about the history of special operations forces?" "I've studied the major operations and development of doctrines, sir. My grandfather shared some of his experiences from Vietnam as well." "Your grandfather was Roberto Martinez, correct?" "Sergeant Major, 3 tours, Silver Star recipient." Sarah was startled. "Yes, sir. How did you?" "I make it my business to know about the families of exceptional candidates. Your grandfather and I served together briefly in 2003 when he was recalled as an advisor for urban warfare training. He spoke about you frequently, his granddaughter who wanted to serve, but couldn't understand why size and gender mattered more than heart and intelligence." The revelation left Sarah momentarily speechless. Her grandfather had never mentioned knowing anyone connected to her current training program. "He also mentioned a family heirloom that you wear, something with historical significance." Instinctively, Sarah's hand moved to her wrist where the leather bracelet remained hidden under her uniform sleeve. She had been careful to keep it concealed during training, uncertain about regulations regarding personal items. "May I see it?" Commander Torres asked. Sarah hesitated, then pulled back her sleeve to reveal the weathered leather bracelet with its silver Aztec warrior charm. Commander Torres examined it carefully, his expression becoming more serious. "Miguel Martinez, Mexican Revolution, fought with Villa," he said, recognizing the significance immediately. "Your grandfather showed me a photograph of this during one of our conversations. He said it had been worn by every generation of Martinez men who served in combat." "Yes, sir. He gave it to me before Hell Week. And now a Martinez woman is wearing it into combat training." Commander Torres looked at her with new respect. "Do you understand the historical significance of what that represents?" Sarah nodded slowly. "I think it represents the evolution of service and sacrifice, the idea that protecting others and serving something larger than yourself isn't limited by gender or tradition." Commander Torres stood and walked to his window, looking out at the training grounds where recruits were engaged in various exercises. "Martinez, I'm going to tell you something that isn't common knowledge. This training program has a 93% washout rate. Most people who start never finish, regardless of their physical capabilities or initial motivation." He turned back to face her. "The people who succeed aren't necessarily the strongest or the fastest. They're the ones who understand that special operations work is fundamentally about making good decisions under impossible pressure, often with incomplete information and conflicting priorities. Sarah waited, sensing that he was building towards something important. Your decision yesterday to prioritize your teammates' welfare over mission completion was exactly the kind of judgment we're looking for in special operations personnel. You analyzed the situation, considered all factors including long-term consequences, and made a decision based on sound principles rather than narrow mission parameters. The weight of what he was saying began to sink in. Sir, does this mean? It means you've demonstrated the qualities that matter most for this type of work. Physical capabilities can be developed with training. Tactical skills can be taught. But the kind of judgment and character you've shown can't be manufactured. Commander Torres returned to his desk and opened another folder. I'm recommending you for advancement to the final phase of training. 6 more weeks of intensive work, then graduation and assignment to your first operational unit. Sarah felt a surge of emotion that she struggled to contain. After months of doubt, criticism, and physical challenges that had pushed her beyond what she thought possible, she was being told that she had succeeded. Thank you, sir. I won't disappoint you or the program. I know you won't, Martinez. But I want you to understand something else. The harassment you experienced earlier in training, the doubts about your capabilities, that doesn't end just because you complete this program. You're going to face skepticism throughout your career from people who can't see past surface appearances. He leaned forward, his expression becoming more intense. But you've proven that determination and intelligence can overcome physical limitations. More importantly, you've shown that you won't compromise your principles under pressure. Those qualities are going to make you an exceptional special operations member. As Sarah left Commander Torres's office, she felt the weight of the bracelet around her wrist differently than she had before. It no longer felt like a reminder of family history, but like a symbol of continuing evolution, of traditions adapting to new realities while maintaining their essential meaning. The remaining weeks of training passed quickly, with Sarah continuing to excel in areas that utilized her analytical and tactical strengths. The physical challenges remained demanding, but her confidence and capabilities had grown enough that she could meet all requirements consistently. On graduation day, as she stood with the 7 other recruits who had completed the entire program, Sarah thought about the journey from that first morning when she had been dismissed as too small and weak to succeed. The bracelet hidden under her dress uniform sleeve seemed to pulse with the accumulated strength of generations who had faced their own seemingly impossible challenges. Her grandfather sat in the front row of the audience, his chest covered with his own military decorations, his eyes bright with pride as he watched his granddaughter receive recognition as one of the most promising candidates in the program's recent history. During the ceremony, Commander Torres spoke about the qualities that define successful special operations personnel: intelligence, adaptability, moral courage, and the ability to make difficult decisions under pressure. As he spoke, his eyes briefly met Sarah's, acknowledging the specific journey she had traveled to reach this moment. When the ceremony concluded and families gathered to congratulate the new graduates, Sarah's grandfather approached with tears in his eyes. As he embraced her, he whispered quietly, "Miguel would be proud. You've honored the legacy while making it your own." Later that evening, as Sarah prepared for her first assignment to an operational unit, she wrote one final letter to her grandfather thanking him for the bracelet and for the strength it had provided throughout training. She also wrote a letter to her deceased brother David, telling him that she had found her way to serve others and protect those who couldn't protect themselves. The small silver charm caught the light as she sealed both letters, a reminder that the most meaningful victories often come not from overpowering opponents, but from refusing to let others define what you're capable of achieving. Sarah Martinez had proven that true strength comes in many forms, and that the most effective warriors are often those who fight not just with physical power but with intelligence, determination, and an unshakable commitment to doing what's right regardless of the personal cost.